Okay, let's jump right in something that absolutely exploded into the public consciousness, often tied to headlines about digital images selling for, well, astronomical sums.
We're talking about NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
Exactly. For a while, it felt like they were just these wildly expensive JPEGs, right? Sort
Yeah.
of a bizarre corner of the internet for collectors with maybe too much money.
Uh-huh. But if you've been following the space or even just caught some of the headlines later on, they quickly reveal themselves to be far more than that.
And frankly, a whole lot more complex. The sources we've gathered for this deep dive, and we've got a stack of articles, research reports, detailed legal analysis, even some candid discussions from online communities, they really show just how quickly this technology is evolving.
Yeah, and presenting both surprising potential and, well, let's be honest, some very significant risks and challenges, especially when you start thinking about investment and, the actual rules you have to play by.
That initial perception, the one driven by those massive art sales, that was really just scratching the surface.
Totally. As the sources demonstrate, the core technology underpinning NFTs, it has applications reaching into industries far beyond just digital art.
We're seeing them touch real estate, completely change how we think about digital ownership in virtual worlds.
Offer new models for gaming, and even challenge established legal and financial systems in ways that, frankly, are still being fiercely debated.
Yeah, this stack of material gives us a really comprehensive look at this rapid transformation, doesn't it?
It really does. A lot to cover.
So our mission in this deep dive is basically to help you, our listener, make sense of all this. We're going to try and cut through the noise, the hype.
Get to what NFTs truly are at their core, explore the potential investment opportunities alongside the significant risks and pitfalls, of course.
And get a clearer picture of the, let's face it, confusing legal and tax landscape they face here in the U.S.
Plus, look at where the market stands today and what factors are shaping its future.
We've really pulled from a diverse range of sources to try and get a complete picture.
Yeah, we've got market analysis from SEB 10X, some deep technical explanations, and real-world examples from Pillsbury.
Specific insights into the legal and regulatory battles from experts at Mayer Brown and Law of the Ledger.
Practical, very detailed guidance on the incredibly complex tax implications from Gordon Law Group.
Market sentiment from Investopedia, and even some pretty unfiltered perspectives from a Reddit discussion.
It just highlights how many different angles you need to consider to truly understand NFTs in the U.S. today. It's not simple.
Okay, so let's unpack this. While the world first really took notice of NFTs because of those headline-grabbing digital art sales, I mean, who could forget the Beeple collage?
Nearly $70 million back in 2021. Crazy numbers.
Right. But the sources make it clear that the underlying technology was always envisioned for much broader use.
At its core, yeah. As sources like Pillsbury, My Art Broker, and Al Gosone explain, an NFT is fundamentally a unique digital token.
The non-fungible part means it's one of a kind. Unlike Bitcoin or, a dollar bill, you can't just swap it for another identical one.
Exactly. And this unique token gets recorded on a blockchain, which is like a shared, public, and incredibly secure digital ledger.
And what that token represents is ownership of an asset. Could be purely digital, like that famous Beeple image.
Or it could be something linked to the real world. The magic of the blockchain here is that it provides a verifiable, transparent, and nearly tamper-proof way to prove you're the authentic owner of whatever that token represents.
So think of it less like owning the item itself, maybe, and more like owning a certificate of authenticity and title that anyone in the world can verify instantly on that public ledger.
That's a good way to put it. And once that core concept was established, this unique, verifiable digital certificate of ownership, the potential applications started to expand rapidly.
Beyond just collecting digital art.
Way beyond. Which leads us right into the concept of real-world asset NFTs, or RWA NFTs.
RWA NFTs. Okay, now this is where it starts to get really interesting for a lot of people, I think, because the idea is to take that digital certificate and tie it to something physical, something tangible.
Exactly. Sources like SEB 10X and Pillsbury go into detail on this. The concept is, well, simple enough on the surface. You tokenize a physical asset. Maybe it's be the real estate, maybe a rare bottle of wine, maybe a physical painting.
And you create an NFT that's somehow irrevocably linked to it.
Right. And what does this unlock? Potentially, things like fractional ownership. Imagine owning just a percentage of a multi-million-dollar painting or high-value commercial property that, you couldn't possibly afford to buy outright on your own.
Makes sense. And the theory is, by tokenizing it, you could make trading that ownership, whether it's the whole asset or just a fraction, much faster and easier.
That's the promise. Faster and easier than traditional methods that involve tons of paperwork, intermediaries, lawyers, all that stuff.
Pillsbury provides some compelling examples of how this is being explored, right? They talk about tokenizing physical real estate.
They do. The idea is that an NFT could eventually represent the actual legal deed to a property.
Wow. So in a fully realized system, the sources suggest you could potentially bypass traditional intermediaries, like title companies, maybe even lawyers, who handle verification and transfers now.
That's the theoretical endgame. The blockchain, acting as that secure public ledger, would theoretically be able to verify the ownership chain, identify any encumbrances like mortgages or lands.
And allow the transaction to settle in, what, minutes or hours instead of weeks or months?
That's the dream, yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to the current traditional real estate closing process, it would be revolutionary.
And while this is still largely theoretical for, widespread adoption in the U.S., there are real-world examples, proofs of concept.
There are. Pillsbury specifically mentions Propy. They're a tech company that's been pushing this. They facilitated the sale of TechCrunch founder Michael Arrington's apartment in Ukraine back in 2021.
Right, sold it as an NFT linked to the legal ownership for over $93,000.
And they followed that up in 2022 with a sale of a property in Tampa, Florida for $215,000, also using an NFT.
So these aren't just hypotheticals. These were actual property transactions using this tech.
Real transactions.
Yeah.
Now, beyond selling entire properties, the concept also extends to using tokens or NFTs to raise funds for real estate developments or letting investors own stakes in properties.
Pillsbury highlights some instances there too.
Yeah, like back in 2018, the St. Regis Aspen Resort sold an 18.9% stake in the property using digital tokens they call Aspen coins.
Interesting.
And more recently, you see platforms like OmniSci using ORT tokens to raise capital for property investments and distribute revenue back to the token holders.
And Lofty AI, they take it even further, right? Letting people invest small amounts.
Yeah, like as little as $50 to own a fractional stake in a rental property LLC with their ownership represented by tokens. That dramatically lowers the barrier to entry for real estate investment.
It's fascinating to see how companies are creatively trying to link the digital token to the physical world. Pillsbury mentions OXO living in Indonesia.
Right, selling art NFTs described as representing Bali homes. Maybe not a direct tokenization of the deed itself, but conceptually linking a high-value digital asset to a physical one, reportedly giving the NFT owner a right of first refusal on the actual property.
And Vesta Equity is working on a platform for homeowners to issue tokens representing fractional ownership in their own homes, like a new way to access home equity.
Exactly, a potential alternative to traditional loans or HELOCs.
Okay, but, and this is a big but, we need to anchor this in reality, as Pillsbury stresses, despite these intriguing examples and the clear potential.
Applying NFTs directly to traditional real estate ownership on a large scale in the U.S. is currently very rare.
Why is that? What's the main roadblock?
The biggest hurdle is regulatory and legal. Existing laws, county land records across the country. They simply do not recognize ownership transfers via an NFT.
So you can't just transfer an NFT and expect the courthouse to record you as the new owner.
Not even close. And then you have the established traditional real estate industry brokers, title companies, lawyers, banks. It's deeply entrenched, lots of stakeholders.
And inherently slow to adopt such a disruptive technology.
Exactly. So while the potential is definitely there, the path to widespread adoption in this specific sector, it's still very long, requires significant legal and systemic change.
Okay, so RWA NFTs, full of potential, but kind of bogged down by real-world infrastructure and legal challenges for now. Let's shift from the tangible to the purely digital realm, where NFTs found a much more immediate, maybe more natural fit, the metaverse.
Yeah, the metaverse concept, almost by definition, is built on digital assets and digital ownership. Pillsbury points out that platforms like Decentraland and the Sandbox, these popular virtual worlds, they operate by selling parcels of virtual land.
And ownership of these parcels is linked to NFTs.
Inextricably linked, typically on blockchains like Ethereum.
So how does owning a piece of virtual land through an NFT actually work? Like, what happens when you buy it?
Pillsbury explains the process. When you buy virtual land on one of these platforms, the transaction gets recorded on the blockchain.
Okay.
The specific NFT representing that unique parcel of digital real estate is then transferred directly into your digital wallet.
And the metaverse platform itself knows you own it. How?
It authenticates your ownership simply by verifying which digital wallet is linked to your account and then checking that wallet for the correct land NFT. It's transparent, decentralized, verifiable.
A clear record of who owns what piece of that virtual world.
Precisely.
And we saw some truly eye-popping investments in this space during the peak hype cycle. Pillsbury notes Republic Realm now. Every realm paid a staggering $4.3 million for virtual land in the sandbox.
Yeah, back in 2021, that headline really underscored the kind of perceived value being created, or at least speculated upon, within these digital ecosystems.
And the financial innovation doesn't stop at just owning the land, right? DeFi is getting involved.
Right. Pillsbury highlights how decentralized finance, or DeFi, is integrating with these metaverse NFTs. Owners of this digital property can leverage their NFTs in new financial ways.
Like what?
Well, for example, platforms like NFTfi let users put up their valuable NFTs as collateral for loans.
Interesting. So you can borrow against your virtual land NFT?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Or you can use platforms like Fractional to fractionalize a valuable land NFT, basically. Sell smaller, more affordable stakes to multiple buyers, which increases liquidity.
Or platforms like NFTX let you potentially earn yield or interest on your digital assets by depositing them into vaults.
Exactly. So it's building a whole financial layer on top of the virtual property ownership.
Okay, so beyond representing ownership of assets, physical or virtual NFTs are also being used to provide practical utility and even things like digital identity.
This is another really crucial area for the technology, highlighted particularly by SCB10X and Pillsbury. Utility NFTs aren't just passive collectibles. They actively do something for the holder, or grant them specific benefits or access.
Give me some examples from the sources. How are companies actually using these utility NFTs?
Well, SCB10X points to things like digital passes or IDs that grant real-world value, maybe exclusive access to events, clubs, or online communities.
Okay, like a digital ticket or membership card.
Exactly. And Pillsbury adds some concrete examples. Marriott Bonvoy, their loyalty program, has used NFTs to offer unique rewards or experiences to members holding them.
And AMC theaters, too.
Yeah, AMC Theaters experimented with using NFTs to reward moviegoers or provide special access. The NFT essentially becomes that digital key or membership card that unlocks value, often in the real world.
That feels like a pretty natural evolution, leveraging the unique, verifiable nature of the NFT. A digital credential with real-world benefits.
It does. And another area where practical utility is seen as a major driver is Web3 gaming.
Absolutely. Both SCB10X and Algazone really emphasize the huge potential of gaming to be a primary catalyst for the broader adoption, maybe even the recovery of the NFT market.
So why is gaming seen as so much more significant for driving adoption compared to, say, the art market? What's the key difference?
The sources point to the inherent utility within the gaming context, unlike a piece of digital art that you mostly just collect or display.
Right.
In-game items tokenized as NFTs, things like unique weapons, character skins, virtual pets, pieces of virtual land within a game, players actually use them.
Ah, okay. You play with them, upgrade them.
Exactly. You trade them with other players in open marketplaces, maybe even carry them between different games if interoperability standards ever really take off.
SCB10X and Algazone highlight that this practical application creates a much deeper form of engagement and value than just pure speculation or static collection. Algazone describes them as items with utility beyond digital art.
Makes sense. SCB10X gives the example of Metal Valley. It's described as a hybrid game.
Hybrid, meaning what?
Meaning it offers players a choice. You can play conventionally, like a normal game, or you can connect your crypto wallet to the blockchain and engage with the game's economy through NFT ownership of the in-game assets.
Interesting. So it bridges the gap.
That's the idea. SCB10X views this hybrid model, bridging traditional Web2 gaming mechanics with Web3 ownership, as potentially critical for onboarding millions of mainstream users. People who aren't necessarily crypto enthusiasts, just gamers.
NFT Evening Analysis, cited by SCB10X, even calls Web3 gaming a multi-billion-dollar on-ramp for users entering the whole NFT space.
Yeah, it really speaks to the idea that value driven by genuine use cases rather than just speculative hype might be the key to sustainable growth for NFTs.
Seems plausible.
And finally, a rapidly evolving area mentioned in the sources is AI-generated NFTs.
Ah, yes. SCB10X points to this as an emerging trend. Artificial intelligence is being used to actually create the digital art assets that are then minted as NFTs.
So instead of a human artist spending hours on a piece, an AI model generates the visuals, maybe based on text prompts or something?
That's precisely it. SCB10X mentions projects like Eponym, which allows users to leverage AI to generate unique digital art based on their text descriptions.
And that AI-generated art can then be minted and sold as an NFT on marketplaces like OpenSea.
Right.
This immediately raises some complex questions, though, doesn't it? Like copyright ownership.
Yeah.
Who owns the art created by the AI?
Exactly. Is it the user who provided the prompt, the developer of the AI model?
And what about establishing standards for provenance and authenticity when the creator isn't a human artist in the traditional sense? SCB10X notes these are definitely new questions the space is grappling with.
They really are. It's just another example of how the NFT ecosystem isn't static. It's constantly intersecting with other cutting-edge tech like AI, creating new possibilities and, well, new challenges simultaneously.
So, okay, we've seen NFTs used for a really wide array of purposes now. Tokenizing physical assets, virtual land, providing utility and loyalty programs, driving engagement in gaming, even venturing into AI-generated art.
It's a diverse landscape, much more than just expensive JPEGs.
Definitely. This diverse set of applications points to value extending far beyond that initial perception. But taking that step from understanding the tech to actually investing in NFTs, as the sources make abundantly clear, that is anything but simple.
No, it's a landscape fraught with both potential rewards and very significant risks.
Investopedia puts it well. They note that investing in NFTs shares some characteristics with investing in traditional crypto, mainly the high volatility, the market-driven nature.
But with the added complexity that the investment value is often tied to the perceived value or utility of the underlying asset the NFT represents, whether that's digital art, a virtual item, or a link to a physical object.
And the consensus across sources, SCB10X, Investopedia, even discussions on Reddit, is that this is inherently a high-risk, highly volatile market, no question.
Absolutely. Caveat emptor, big time.
Okay, let's dig into the potential upside first, though.
Yes.
What do the sources identify as the pros of investing in NFTs? What's the bull case?
Well, Investopedia outlines several key potential advantages. First, there's the accessibility. NFT markets are generally open to pretty much anyone with a computer and internet access.
Global reach.
Yeah, broad global reach. This contrasts sharply with traditional high-value asset markets, like fine art, which often have extremely high barriers to entry and limited access.
So it could potentially democratize access to certain asset classes.
That's one argument, yes. Investopedia also points to the convenience and efficiency of digital ownership verification. The blockchain provides that transparent, easily auditable record of ownership.
They call them portable contracts.
Yeah, that can digitally signify ownership right from an app or website, potentially streamlining processes that currently require tons of paperwork and legal intermediaries, which could reduce time and cost.
And because the blockchain is, tamper-proof, it can theoretically strengthen the legal evidence of ownership and help mitigate potential disputes over who rightfully owns an asset.
According to Investopedia, yes. Another major advantage they highlight is facilitating fractional ownership.
Right, we touched on this with RWAs.
Exactly. NFTs can enable investors to own small, manageable portions of assets that were previously indivisible or just too expensive for most individuals. This dramatically improves liquidity for high-value assets and opens up alternative avenues for crowdfunding.
And for the creators, the artists, the benefits seem significant there too.
They do. My Art Broker and discussions on Reddit point out that NFTs provide clear provenance, linking a digital work directly to its creator on the blockchain.
And crucially, the royalty feature.
Yes. Many NFT platforms are designed so artists automatically receive a percentage of the sale price every single time their NFT is resold on the secondary market.
That's potentially a game changer compared to the traditional art market, where artists rarely benefit from resales.
Huge potential difference, yeah.
Right.
My Art Broker also adds that, like physical art NFTs can potentially appreciate over time, driven by factors like the artist's reputation, the project's community, the NFT's limited supply.
And the transparency and security of blockchain verification can build confidence among buyers, in the authenticity at least.
It can help, yes. Though, as we'll definitely get into, it doesn't eliminate all the fraud risks. Not by a long shot.
Okay, so potential for accessibility, fractional ownership, creator royalties, verifiable provenance. Those sound pretty compelling.
They do.
But the sources are equally, if not more, vocal about the downsides, the significant risks and disadvantages of investing in NFTs.
And this is where, investors really need to pay extremely close attention. The list of cons is substantial, and it often intersects with the general risks of the wider crypto market.
Like market manipulation.
Definitely. Investopedia, Reddit users, SEB10X, they all highlight that the NFT market is highly susceptible to manipulation. It's largely unregulated in most places.
Meaning very little consumer protection compared to, say, the stock market.
Exactly. The market's notorious for speculative hype cycles, extreme volatility, and significant risk of pump-and-dump schemes.
Where early buyers hype the price and then sell off, leaving others holding the bag.
Precisely. A Reddit user describes it very well, saying it often feels like a greater fool game, where the value is driven solely by hoping someone else will pay more later, and it's heavily influenced by large holders, the whales, who can manipulate prices.
This unregulated environment also creates fertile ground for fraud and scams, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Investopedia warns extensively about the potential for fraud, scams, even facilitating money laundering. It's relatively easy for bad actors to create fake NFT projects, phishing websites designed to steal your wallet info.
Or engage in rug pulls where the project founders just disappear after raising funds.
Yeah. The pseudonymous nature of blockchain addresses and the remote nature of transactions make it incredibly difficult for users to vet the legitimacy of projects or the true identity of sellers.
And it presents challenges for platforms trying to implement robust anti-money laundering, AML, and know your customer, KYC compliance checks.
Big challenges, as highlighted by Investopedia.
And the probably isn't just the transaction itself, it can be the underlying asset, right?
Exactly. Investopedia points out the risk that the asset the NFT is supposed to represent might be non-existent or duplicated, maybe using stolen intellectual property or otherwise tainted.
So, just because an NFT exists doesn't guarantee the associated digital or physical asset is legitimate or unique.
Not at all. Which brings us to a really critical point.
All right.
The limited legal rights you often get with an NFT.
Right. If I buy an NFT of a cool digital image, doesn't that mean I own the image? Can I stop others from using it?
This is a major point of confusion and a huge risk. Investopedia and Reddit users stress this. Owning the NFT typically grants you ownership of that specific digital token on the blockchain. It documents your ownership of that token.
Okay.
However, it does not automatically grant you the intellectual property rights, the patents, trademarks, or copyrights to the underlying digital asset, like the image, video, or music file.
So while I own the verifiable token, someone else can just copy, screenshot, or pirate the digital image it represents.
Easily. The NFT doesn't provide legal protection against infringement in the same way traditional copyright does.
And as a Reddit user points out, there's also the risk that the website hosting the digital asset linked to your NFT might just go offline or disappear entirely.
Yeah, leaving your NFT token intact on the blockchain, but the actual digital content it points to, inaccessible, broken link.
Wow. So you own the certificate, but not necessarily the thing the certificate is about, or the rights to control how others use that thing. That is a crucial distinction.
It is absolutely critical, and one often overlooked by new investors caught up in the hype.
Another significant con, according to Investopedia, is the trade-off of self-managing security.
Right. Unlike traditional banks or brokerages that hold your assets and provide security, with NFTs, you are typically responsible for managing your own digital wallet and private keys.
Which requires technical understanding.
And carries significant risks. Loss through phishing scams, malware, getting your devices hacked, or simply losing your seed phrase, your backup password, essentially.
And the transparency of the blockchain, while good for verification, can be a privacy issue.
It can be. It makes your entire transaction history and holdings public, which can expose you to targeted scams.
There's also the added complexity of just analyzing potential investments.
Yes. Investopedia notes you need to analyze two things: the technical structure and legitimacy of the NFT itself, and the value proposition of the underlying asset.
And for digital-only goods, like PFP avatars or in-game items, determining intrinsic value can be really subjective.
Incredibly subjective. Heavily reliant on community sentiment, future utility promises, market hype, which makes valuation extremely difficult and volatile.
My Art Broker specifically mentions the inherent volatility of NFT valuations and the risk of buying counterfeit NFTs.
Yeah, an NFT that looks legitimate but was minted by a scammer using stolen art or different contract address. They also highlight that dramatic market shift. After the peak in 2021-2022, art NFT sales volume just plummeted in 2022.
And as the Reddit discussion reflects, there's still a strong sentiment among some that the whole NFT space is just a passing fad, a speculative bubble waiting to burst.
Definitely. Contrasting it sharply with the centuries of history and established value chains in the traditional art world.
How do the sources compare investing in NFTs versus traditional art more directly? What are the key differences highlighted?
A Reddit user offers a pretty vivid comparison. Traditional art investment is like navigating established galleries with long histories, while NFT investment is the Wild West digital frontier.
Traditional art has that deep cultural significance. It's tangible.
And its market, while exclusive and having high entry prices, is generally seen as more stable than more established valuation methods, even if it's illiquid.
NFTs, on the other hand, offer that digital scarcity, the verifiable proof of ownership on the blockchain.
Potential for broader access, maybe lower entry prices for some projects, those artist royalties we talked about, global accessibility for viewing.
And the digital asset itself isn't susceptible to physical damage, assuming the tech holds up.
Right. The debate often boils down to whether the value of an NFT is derived from true intrinsic value, like utility or cultural significance, or purely from speculative hype and hoping to find that greater fool.
And as noted earlier, many contemporary artists are now doing both traditional and crypto art, kind of blurring the lines.
They are indeed.
Okay, so for those still considering investing or trading in this space, despite all the risks, the sources do offer some strategies. Algosone, which focuses on AI trading, lists several common approaches.
Right. They mentioned dollar cost averaging, or DCA, as a way to navigate the volatility.
How does that work again?
It involves investing a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, regardless of the asset price. The idea is you buy more when prices are low and less when they're high, averaging out your purchase cost over time. Helps reduce vulnerability to sudden market swings.
Then there's the buck the trends strategy.
Yeah, basically advising against getting swept up in FOMO, fear of missing out and buying during peak hype. Instead, taking a contrarian approach. Maybe buying when the market is down, sentiment is negative, hoping for a long-term recovery.
Flipping seems like another popular one, especially for active traders.
Very popular. Trying to buy NFTs low, maybe when they first launch or seem undervalued, and then quickly selling them for a profit as demand hopefully increases.
Algosone notes this requires significant skill, though, identifying promising projects early.
Yeah, often by constantly sifting through social channels, Twitter, Discord, Reddit, looking for signals before they hit the mainstream. It's hard work.
Diversification is a strategy emphasized by multiple sources, right? Algosone, Reddit.
Absolutely. Given the high risk of individual projects just failing or losing value completely, spreading your investment across different types of NFTs, different blockchains, different categories like art, gaming, utility, blue chips.
And crucially, diversifying beyond just NFTs or crypto into other asset classes entirely.
That's seen as essential risk management. Don't put all your eggs in one highly volatile basket.
And Algosone naturally suggests leveraging AI trading systems.
Well, yeah, they argue the complexity, the research needed, the market analysis, the sheer volume of opportunities and risks. It makes manual trading incredibly time-consuming and challenging for individuals.
So AI systems, they claim, can automate some of that analysis and execution.
Right. Now, acknowledging this comes from a source promoting AI, the underlying point about the difficulty of successfully navigating this market manually is widely recognized across other sources, too. It is complex.
So for beginners just thinking about dipping their toes into this space, what's the collective advice from the sources like Reddit, Investopedia, Algosone?
The advice is remarkably consistent and, frankly, very cautious.
Start small.
Definitely. Start small. Do not invest money you cannot afford to lose, period.
Take the time to learn first.
Deeply learn the landscape before buying anything. Understand exactly what the NFT represents. Is it just pixels? Does it have utility? Is it linked to something physical?
Don't just chase hype or celebrity endorsements.
No. Do your own research, DYOR, on the specific project, the team behind it, the marketplace you're using, the artist.
And be extremely vigilant about scams and security risks.
Know the common scams. Learn how to protect your wallet. It's crucial. Diversification is key, even within the NFT space itself.
And Investopedia offers a pretty fundamental piece of advice, too.
Yeah. Consider buying only if the underlying asset has an established market you understand and genuinely interests you, rather than just pure speculation on the token price itself.
Okay. So we've covered the expanding uses of NFTs, the thrilling yet frankly terrifying landscape of investing in them. This brings us directly to the next major hurdle: navigating the complex and often uncertain legal and regulatory environment for NFTs here in the United States.
And this is arguably the single most significant challenge facing the NFT market today. Sources like Mayer Brown, Law of the Ledger, SCB 10X, they consistently point to substantial legal and regulatory uncertainty.
And it centers on one fundamental question, right?
Right.
When is an NFT considered a security under U.S. law?
That's the crux of it. And it seems the primary method the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, has used to address this uncertainty isn't by issuing clear guidelines up front,
But rather through bringing enforcement actions against specific projects or platforms after the fact. Law of the Ledger specifically calls this regulation by enforcement.
That's exactly right. Under the previous administration, the SEC significantly ramped up its scrutiny of the crypto and NFT markets. Instead of publishing a clear rulebook saying, okay, these types of NFTs are securities and these types are not.
They've pursued enforcement cases against companies or individuals, alleging that the NFTs they issued or the platforms they operated involved unregistered securities.
Let's look at some specific cases highlighted by the sources. SEC v. Impact Theory seems like a really important one.
It is. Mayer Brown and Law of the Ledger discussed this settlement from August 2023 as the first time the SEC directly charged an NFT issuer.
And they allege that Impact Theory's founders' keys, NFTs, were in fact investment contracts, and therefore securities under the long-established Howey test.
Exactly. The Howey test is the legal standard the SEC uses to determine what constitutes an investment contract.
So what was it about the founders' keys that made the SEC see them as securities? It wasn't just digital art.
No. Mayer Brown explains the SEC's focus was heavily on Impact Theory's marketing, how the NFTs were promoted to potential buyers.
Ah, the messaging.
Right. The SEC alleged the company's messaging invited investors to view the NFTs primarily as an investment opportunity, emphasizing potential profit and value appreciation based on the company's future efforts.
So marketing statements highlighting financial upside or referring to buyers being enriched. That was the evidence.
That was key evidence cited by the SEC, suggesting these were marketed as investment contracts where buyers expected profits from the company's work, fitting the Howey test criteria.
And the settlement was pretty significant.
Substantial, yeah. Mayer Brown details that Impact Theory accepted the findings without admitting or denying guilt, but agreed to major penalties. Over $5 million in disgorgement, returning allegedly ill-gotten gains.
A $500,000 civil penalty.
They had to destroy any founders' keys, NFTs they still held, and significantly eliminate the ability to earn future royalties from secondary market sales.
Wow. Law of the Ledger notes Impact had already repurchased around $7.7 million worth of the NFTs before the settlement, too.
Now, it's important to note, as Mayer Brown points out, this specific action wasn't universally agreed upon within the SEC itself.
Oh, really? There was dissent?
Yeah, 2 commissioners dissented. They argued these particular NFTs shouldn't have been classified as investment contracts, saying they were more like collectibles with vague promises of brand building.
And they called for the SEC to provide clear rules instead of just enforcement actions.
Explicitly, echoing the industry's own complaints about regulation by enforcement.
Now, this highlights the complex and sometimes conflicting picture painted by our sources.
Yeah.
Because Law of the Ledger, in its report dated late 2024, says OpenSea, the biggest NFT marketplace, received a Wells notice from the SEC in August 2024.
A Wells notice being that formal notification that SEC staff intend to recommend enforcement action.
Right. And Law of the Ledger says the notice allegedly relates to OpenSea operating as an unregistered securities exchange. They also say OpenSea denies the allegations and is supporting a legal defense fund for creators.
Okay, but then the SCB 10X source, dated March 2025, mentions that the SEC surprised the industry by closing its investigation of OpenSea in early 2024 without filing charges. And they interpreted this as a signal of easing regulatory pressure.
Exactly. So we have one source reporting a serious Wells notice in late 2024 and another reporting an investigation closing without charges earlier that same year.
This perfectly illustrates the dynamic, fast-moving, and sometimes contradictory nature of reports in this space. It underscores just how uncertain the regulatory situation can be, almost moment to moment.
It absolutely does. You have to read these reports carefully and understand things can change quickly. Law of the Ledger provides more examples of the SEC's enforcement focus, too.
Like Flyfish Club.
Yeah, cease and desist order against Flyfish Club in September 2024. They issued NFTs promising access to a private restaurant.
But their marketing also emphasized potential passive income from reselling memberships or leasing them out.
And the SEC saw that marketing highlighting profit potential as crossing the line into offering securities. They also settled, agreed to destroy certain NFTs, stop future royalties.
Some companies are pushing back more strongly, though.
Some are. Law of the Ledger reports that Crypto.com actually sued the SEC after receiving a Wells notice, seeking a court judgment, basically saying the SEC lacks jurisdiction over their assets, a more aggressive stance.
So it's not just the government bringing lawsuits. Private individuals, users, are also suing NFT projects.
Correct. Law of the Ledger confirms that private civil lawsuits are also being filed against NFT issuers and marketplaces, brought by individuals or groups of users, often echoing the SEC's arguments.
Claiming the NFTs they bought were unregistered securities and they were harmed.
Exactly. Examples include a lawsuit against Nifty Gateway Marketplace, which got compelled into arbitration, and a class action lawsuit filed by users against OpenSea in late 2024, making similar allegations to those reportedly in that SEC Wells notice.
And we're even seeing artists preemptively sue the SEC. That sounds unusual.
It is pretty unusual. Law of the Ledger highlights this. Some artists are filing lawsuits against the SEC to proactively challenge the agency's authority over their art NFTs and seek clarity rather than waiting to maybe get targeted.
Like Jonathan Mann and Brian L. Fry.
Yeah, they filed suit in July 2024, citing the SEC's actions against others as reason to seek judicial confirmation that their specific art NFTs are not securities.
And the SEC's response.
Law of the Ledger notes the SEC responded with a motion to dismiss, suggesting the agency might prefer not to have courts weigh in broadly on these classifications if possible, maybe preferring their case-by-case enforcement approach.
At the heart of all these SEC actions, these legal battles, is the Howey test. Can you briefly explain what that is again?
Sure. The Howey test comes from a 1946 Supreme Court case. It's the primary framework the SEC uses to determine if something qualifies as an investment contract and is therefore a security subject to their regulation.
And the core idea, as applied to crypto and NFTs,
is usually whether there was an investment of money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profits derived solely or primarily from the efforts of others.
If an NFT project meets that test, even if it's called a digital collectible or utility token, the SEC might see it as an unregistered security offering, which is illegal unless registered or exempt.
That's the SEC's position. And the marketing language, the promises made by the issuer, those are often key factors the SEC examines under this test. What expectations were set for buyers?
This all paints a picture of a highly uncertain, quite litigious environment. However, Law of the Ledger suggests that 2025 could potentially be a turning point for this regulatory landscape.
They point to a few converging factors. One is potential legislative action in Congress.
Right, the proposed NFT Act, introduced by Representative William Timmons.
Exactly. This bill aims to provide a legal definition for certain NFTs, specifically those that aren't considered securities, and calls for a study on the NFT market.
So if passed, legislation like that could provide much-needed clarity and potentially challenge the SEC's current approach.
It could establish boundaries, yes. Another major factor is the shift in the political landscape, with a new administration potentially taking office.
And the sources suggest that's significant.
Both Law of the Ledger and SCB-10X note that early signals from the potential incoming Trump administration suggest a possibly more favorable, or at least less aggressively adversarial stance towards the crypto and NFT industries.
Law of the Ledger also points to projections of more pro-crypto members in Congress.
Right, and they highlight potential key appointments. David Sachs, known as a critic of regulatory overreach in tech, announced as a White House AI and crypto czar.
And Paul Atkins nominated to lead the SEC, a former SEC commissioner seen as more pro-crypto.
Yes, Atkins has been publicly critical of the agency's approach to crypto. Law of the Ledger interprets these appointments as strong indicators that the regulatory approach could shift, maybe towards something more balanced, less focused purely on enforcement, perhaps favoring clear rules, or even a different agency taking the lead.
Some speculate this could mean more regulatory oversight for crypto assets shifts towards the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC.
That's one speculation. Law of the Ledger notes the CFTC is often viewed more positively by the industry than the SEC for its approach to digital assets.
Okay, but despite these signs of potential easing pressure, possible shifts in direction, the sources agree significant uncertainty remains.
Absolutely. SCB-10X emphasizes the legal status of NFTs is still a very gray area. It's likely the different types of NFTs, a simple digital art collectible versus a utility token versus an in-game item versus something marketed as an investment, will continue to be interpreted differently under the law.
And even with a less aggressive enforcement approach, government agencies could still introduce new regulations down the line.
For sure. Things like disclosure requirements for NFT projects, know your customer, KYC, and anti-money laundering, AML rules for platforms, or clearer, albeit potentially restrictive definitions of what constitutes a security in this context.
So given this persistent legal ambiguity and the risks involved, the advice is clear.
Very clear. Law of the Ledger and SCB 10X strongly advise anyone involved in issuing NFTs or operating NFT marketplaces to seek professional legal counsel, to navigate the potential pitfalls and try to ensure they are structured and operated in a way that minimizes regulatory risk.
It's a landscape where the rules are very much still being defined, often through reactive enforcement and ongoing legal battles.
Exactly. Still very much in flux.
Okay. Navigating the legal and regulatory maze is one huge challenge. Another significant hurdle for anyone involved with NFTs in the U.S. is figuring out the tax implications, which, as the detailed guide from Gordon Law Group makes very clear, are notoriously complex.
Oh, absolutely. Gordon Law Group states upfront, in the U.S., NFTs are generally treated as property for tax purposes, similar to how cryptocurrencies are taxed.
But the specifics are intricate.
Very intricate. And they emphasize that failing to correctly report your NFT transactions can lead to significant penalties, maybe even audits from the IRS.
So if I just buy an NFT with US dollars, is that a taxable event itself?
Generally, no. Just buying it with dollars isn't taxable, similar to buying stock or a physical painting. However, as Gordon Law Group stresses, almost every other transaction involving digital assets, including NFTs, can trigger a tax obligation.
Selling, swapping, gifting, even receiving NFTs.
And all be taxable events.
Yeah.
The more active you are in the NFT market, the exponentially more complicated your tax situation becomes.
What kinds of taxes are we primarily talking about here?
Gordon Law Group identifies two main types of taxable income related to NFTs: capital gains and ordinary income.
Capital gains apply when you sell or dispose of an NFT for a profit.
Right. And ordinary income applies when you receive NFTs or crypto in other ways, maybe through airdrops as payment for services or potentially certain types of rewards.
And for capital gains, the holding period matters a lot for the tax rate, doesn't it?
Crucially so. Gordon Law Group explains the standard U.S. tax rules apply here. If you hold the NFT for less than 1 year before selling it for a profit, that profit is a short-term capital gain.
Which is taxed at your ordinary income tax rates, potentially quite high.
Exactly. Could be up to almost 40%. But if you hold the NFT for 1 year or longer before selling, the profit is a long-term capital gain.
Which gets much more favorable tax rates, topping out at 20% for most taxpayers.
Right. Big difference.
This brings us to a specific point of complexity mentioned by Gordon Law Group. Are NFTs considered collectibles by the IRS? Why does that matter?
This question is vital because, as Gordon Law Group explains, collectibles have a higher maximum long-term capital gains tax rate, 28%, compared to the 20% max for other types of property held long-term.
And this higher 28% rate only applies if you hold the item for a year or longer.
Correct. Only for long-term gains on collectibles.
And the ambiguity is whether digital collectibles fall under the IRS's definition.
Precisely. Gordon Law Group lists the IRS's examples of physical collectibles: art, rugs, antiques, metal, gems, stamps, coins, alcoholic beverages, or any other tangible personal property specified by the Secretary.
Tangible, that's the key word.
It seems to be. The IRS hasn't issued clear guidance specifically stating whether a purely digital item like a PFP avatar or a digital trading card, say NBA Top Shot Moments, should be treated as a collectible, subject to that 28% rate.
So if your NFT represents ownership of a physical artwork, it's likely treated as a collectible.
Gordon Law Group suggests that's likely yes, subject to the 28% rate if held long-term. But for digital-only NFTs, it's ambiguous. They strongly advise consulting a tax professional because the classification can significantly impact your tax bill.
Okay, let's run through a few common NFT activities and their specific tax headaches, according to the source. What about buying or selling an NFT using cryptocurrency, like ETH?
Gordon Law Group confirms this is always a taxable capital gains event, even if you're just swapping one digital asset for another.
The IRS views it as a two-step process.
Essentially, yes. When you use crypto to buy an NFT, it's treated as if you first sold that crypto for its fair market value in US dollars at the exact time of the transaction. You realize a capital gain or loss on the crypto itself.
Then you're treated as using those US dollars to purchase the NFT.
Right. And similarly, selling an NFT for crypto is treated as selling the NFT for its USD value at that moment, and then using that USD to acquire the crypto. Two taxable events potentially wrapped in one transaction.
And the gain or loss calculation is based on the USD values, not the amount of crypto involved. This seems tricky.
This is a critical trap for many. Gordon Law Group emphasizes the calculation is based on the fair market value, FMV, in US dollars at the precise moment the transaction occurred, regardless of how much crypto you receive or paid.
They give an example.
A clear one. Natalie buys an NFT for 10 ETH. At the time, 1 ETH is worth $2,000, so her cost basis for the NFT is $20,000. Later, she sells that NFT for only 5 ETH. But by then, ETH has shot up, and 1 ETH is worth $10,000.
So her sale proceeds are $50,000. 5 ETH, 10K.
Exactly. Despite receiving only half the amount of ETH she paid, she has a $30,000 capital gain. $50,000 sale proceeds minus $20,000 cost basis.
Oh.
This counterintuitive result catches many people off guard.
Wow. Okay, what about swapping one NFT directly for another NFT? Also taxable.
Yes, Gordon Law Group confirms this used to potentially qualify as a like-kind exchange, but tax law changes mean it's now generally considered a taxable event.
So you're treated as selling the first NFT for its FMV in USD at the time of the swap.
And immediately using those proceeds to buy the second NFT. The difficulty here is accurately determining the FMV of unique NFTs at the moment of the swap. It's often very subjective.
And the USD value you sold the first NFT for becomes the cost basis of the second NFT you acquired.
That's right. It makes tracking complicated.
What about pooling funds with friends or other investors to buy a high-value NFT together? Any tax issues there?
Gordon Law Group warns that pooling funds informally can create significant tax complications. Tracking individual contributions, ownership percentages, distributing gains or losses. It gets messy fast.
So what's the best practice?
They strongly recommend setting up a dedicated legal entity, like an LLC, limited liability company, with its own unique wallets and accounts. Provides a clear structure for ownership and tax reporting.
When an artist mints a new NFT, creates it on the blockchain, is that taxable?
Gordon Law Group states that the act of minting the NFT itself is generally not considered a taxable event. The tax obligation arises later, when the artist sells or trades that minted NFT for crypto or USD.
But any fees paid during minting, like gas fees?
Those can typically be added to the cost basis of the NFT, which helps reduce the calculated capital gain when it's eventually sold.
Okay, gifting NFTs.
Generally not taxable for either the giver or the recipient, according to Gordon Law Group, as long as the value stays within the annual and lifetime gift tax exclusion limits set by the IRS.
But the giver should provide records.
Yes, they should document the acquisition date and their original cost basis for the recipient. That info is crucial if the recipient later sells the gifted NFT.
And those annoying blockchain transaction fees, the gas fees, can they reduce taxes?
Gordon Law Group explains that gas fees paid during a taxable event like a sale or swap of an NFT can typically be added to the cost basis of the asset you're selling. Helps reduce your taxable gain.
But not if paid during non-taxable events, like transferring an NFT between your own wallets.
Generally not deductible in that case, no.
Airdrops of NFTs or tokens seem simple free assets, but tax implications.
Unfortunately, yes. Gordon Law Group clarifies that receiving an airdrop of NFTs or tokens is typically considered ordinary income, based on the fair market value of the received assets at the precise time you receive them.
And determining the cost basis for airdropped assets is tricky.
It can be. They warn that using a $0 cost basis is generally not advisable, as it would maximize your capital gain when you eventually sell. Need to establish a reasonable FMV at receipt.
They also caution about scam airdrops.
Yeah, be wary of potential scam airdrops that might just appear in your wallet. They aren't legitimate and can sometimes be incorrectly flagged by tax software as taxable income when they're worthless.
NFTs used in decentralized finance or DeFi, like in liquidity pools or as loan collateral, how does that get taxed?
Gordon Law Group describes DeFi tax rules for NFTs as complex, generally following the same principles as crypto DeFi taxes. For instance, swapping crypto for an LP liquidity pool, NFT representing your share in a pool could be treated as a taxable capital gain event, though this is an area where professional advice is particularly needed.
And if you use an NFT as collateral for a loan and default,
if the lender seizes your NFT because you couldn't repay, that event is treated as a taxable sale of your NFT for you, triggered by the transfer of ownership to the lender.
Okay, given all these complexities, the biggest challenge must just be figuring out the actual numbers to report. The fair market value, the cost basis.
It absolutely is. Gordon Law Group calls determining FMV and cost basis for unique NFTs very difficult. They state flatly the IRS has not provided specific, clear guidance for NFTs.
So how do people even attempt it?
Methods like using the floor price of the collection or the price of the last sale of a similar NFT are sometimes used. For swaps within the same collection, you might transfer the cost basis. But tax attorney George Shacro is quoted emphasizing that determining FMV is extremely subjective and requires a case-by-case legal analysis for every single NFT transaction.
Wow. And traditional crypto tax software often struggles with this.
Yes, Gordon Law Group confirms that existing crypto tax software often has difficulty accurately calculating taxes for NFTs. The sheer volume of unique collections, the nuances of determining FMV for individual non-fungible assets. It strains software built mainly for fungible crypto tokens.
Plus, newer token standards add complexity.
Right. ERC 721 is common, but BRC 20 SPL, ERC 404, ERC 1155. They might be taxed similarly, but could require different calculation methods. Another layer.
So how do people actually manage to calculate and report all of this to the IRS? What's the process?
Gordon Law Group outlines the basics. You need to meticulously gather all your transaction documentation from every platform and wallet used, which is often the hardest part.
Then calculate the capital gains or losses for each transaction.
On IRS Form 8949, then transfer the totals to Schedule D of your Form 1040 tax return.
And ordinary income from airdrops goes elsewhere.
Needs to be reported on Schedule C of Form 1040. But crucially, given all this, they strongly recommend seeking professional tax advice.
They seem pretty direct about the necessity of professional help here.
Extremely direct. Tax attorney and CPA Andrew Gordon is quoted stating unequivocally that most investors need professional help to calculate their NFT taxes correctly. Because of the complexity, the need for subjective legal analysis on FMV and collectible status, the evolving guidance.
And professionals can help ensure correctness and maybe find tax savings.
That's the argument. Help ensure you're compliant and potentially identify strategies individuals might miss. It's just too complex for most people to handle accurately on their own.
Okay, so we have journeyed from the expanding uses of NFTs beyond art through the fascinating yet risky world of investing, navigated the confusing legal minefield involving the SEC and civil lawsuits, and wrestled with the incredibly complex tax implications. What does all of this mean for the NFT market right now, and what should we be looking out for?
Well, SCB 10X provides some important recent market history that puts the current situation in perspective. Following that explosive boom centered around PFP profile picture NFTs in 2021 and 2022.
The market experienced a very significant downturn, right, throughout 2023 and into 2024.
A very significant downturn.
Yeah.
SCB 10X reports trading volumes plummeted by over 60% from their peak. They highlight that 2024 was actually the worst year for NFT trading since 2020. Volumes dramatically lower than during the height of the frenzy.
What drove that sharp decline? What were the main factors?
SCB 10X attributes it to several interconnected factors. The general fall in cryptocurrency prices, which NFT valuations are often correlated with.
Makes sense.
Declining public interest, the hype just fading after the initial excitement wore off.
And the regulatory uncertainty we just talked about.
Exactly. Increasing regulatory uncertainty and those enforcement actions creating a chilling effect on the market. While there were some signs of recovery in late 2024, SCB 10X notes this momentum kind of stalled in early 2025, again, largely linked to broader corrections in the crypto market.
So is the market dead or just consolidating?
Not dead, according to the sources. Investopedia, citing activity on platforms like OpenSea, confirms hundreds of thousands of NFTs are still being sold daily.
So while the speculative art market cooled dramatically, activity continues elsewhere.
Yeah, for gaming assets, collectibles, hobbyist projects, and SCB 10X emphasizes that despite the overall market contraction, innovation in the underlying technology and its applications continues. People are still building.
And the sources identify key factors that are crucial for the market's potential recovery and future growth.
They do. Web3 gaming is repeatedly highlighted as a major potential catalyst.
We keep coming back to gaming.
Because SCB 10X, echoing that NFT evening analysis they cite, believes the practical utility offered by in-game NFTs has the potential to drive mainstream adoption in a way speculative art couldn't.
Those hybrid projects bridging traditional gaming with Web3 elements are seen as particularly important indicators.
Yes, like that Metal Valley example. SEB10X sees those as key for bringing in a wider user base that isn't necessarily crypto native.
Regulatory clarity is another critical factor mentioned across the board.
Absolutely. SDB10X suggests that a reduction in that enforcement pressure and maybe the potential for clearer rules from regulators rather than just case-by-case actions could significantly help the market mature.
Attract more serious participants, enable development of more complex applications like RWA tokenization.
That's the hope. Law of the Ledger and SCB10X point to upcoming legislative efforts like the NFT Act and those potential shifts under the new administration as key developments to monitor for signs of this clarity.
And finally, continued innovation in developing new applications is essential.
Right. SCB10X highlights the growth in RWA NFTs, despite the challenges, utility NFTs, digital identity uses, AI-generated NFTs. It demonstrates the market is evolving beyond its initial focus on speculative art and PFPs, finding new potential areas for value creation.
So, looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, what are the specific areas the sources tell us you should be watching most closely?
SCB10X points to several key areas. First and foremost, regulatory developments, especially how agencies handle RWA NFTs and any NFTs that blur that line with investments.
Second,
watch for the establishment of industry standards and best practices, things like consistent metadata standards, reliable royalty enforcement, better user protection mechanisms. These are needed for market maturity.
And
significant growth and success in gaming and metaverse hybrid projects. That will be a strong signal of whether NFTs are truly finding a scalable mainstream use case.
And for anyone considering becoming an investor in this space, what are the final considerations based on everything we've unpacked? What's the bottom line?
SVB10X is clear. The market remains high risk and volatile. No sugarcoating it.
But opportunities do exist.
Opportunities do exist, yes. Particularly in areas with clear utility or strong potential for real-world linkage gaming assets, certain RWA NFTs, innovative applications integrating AI.
And monitoring regulatory developments is paramount.
Absolutely. SCB10X advises that utility NFTs are likely to perform better than purely speculative ones in the long run, especially if future regulations favor use cases over financial speculation.
They also recommend prioritizing projects designed for flexibility, maybe trying to be regulatory compliant from the start.
Yeah, that seems wise. And given the high risk, the volatility, the constantly shifting landscape, the need for thorough due diligence, as emphasized by Pillsbury and Investopedia, just cannot be overstated.
Don't jump in blindly. Understand the risks. Understand the specifics of what you're buying.
Exactly. Do your homework.
So what does this comprehensive deep dive into the sources mean for you, our listener? Well, it means that NFTs are much, much more than just those flashy headlines about expensive digital art might suggest.
They represent a genuinely fascinating technological innovation with a really wide array of potential applications, from unlocking fractional ownership of physical assets to creating digital identities and potentially revolutionizing in-game economies.
But this potential comes with significant caveats. Here in the US, NFTs exist within a complex and highly uncertain legal and tax environment. One marked by ongoing regulatory battles, conflicting reports, and a distinct lack of clear, settled rules.
Investing in NFTs, therefore, requires extreme caution. It means doing your homework, understanding the significant risks, volatility, fraud, limited legal rights, and being prepared for the headache of tax compliance, likely needing professional help for that alone.
Our goal today was really to take this stack of sources and give you a shortcut, maybe a clearer picture of this multifaceted space, hoping to provide those aha moments and help you navigate beyond the initial hype and confusion.
We've seen NFTs applied to everything from selling multi-million-dollar art pieces to representing stakes in real estate and becoming crucial items in online games. The underlying technology offers compelling new ways to think about digital ownership and its connection to the physical world.
But given the breathtaking speed of technological innovation and the slower, often reactive pace of regulatory attempts to catch up, the exact line between what constitutes a mere collectible, a useful digital tool, or a regulated security for digital assets like NFTs, that line is still being drawn in real time, often through court cases and enforcement actions.
So will 2025 truly be the year that potential legislative action or a shift in administration approach finally brings the clarity the market craves? Or will it just introduce new layers of complexity to navigate? It remains a landscape that demands your careful attention and definitely your critical thinking.